On this Community Wednesday, let's break down the recently nerfed Groza. The Groza was a pretty good sniper support weapon back before it got nerfed, and after it got nerfed we kinda saw that it wouldn't really fit its role anymore, since it lost a lot of its potential up close. But it did not get touched at range, so we'll be seeing if the Groza is still a good sniper support weapon or if it's even better at range. But before we get into its stats, let's break down the build. In this build, we're using the suppressor, the CMV mil-spec barrel, the axial arm 3 times, the Spetsnaz speed grip, although it's normally called the Spetsnaz grip. This is the one that helps with vertical and horizontal recoil, so just check you have the right one, and the Spetsnaz 60 round drum. If you can't tell by now, yes, this build typically is for more long range builds. So let's get into the stats, starting with mobility. Its ADS time is 270 milliseconds, which is pretty good for a Cold War long range rifle. Its reload and reload add times are 2.8 and 2.1 seconds, so just make sure to leave one bullet in the mag when you reload. And its mag cap is 60. Its movement and sprint speeds are pretty good because, of course, it is a Cold War weapon. Its ADS strafe speed is 1.6 meters per second, which is pretty average for a long range rifle, but a little bit lower than I actually expected. And its sprint out and attack sprint out times are 240 and 380 milliseconds, which is actually really good. And its aiming stability is 1.5T, which is great for a long range rifle. And its bullet velocity is pretty great at over 1,100 meters per second, since you won't really have to lead your targets or account for bullet drop that much. And its rate of fire is a great 12.5 rounds per second or 750 rounds per minute. So it gets a mobility score of 40. The recoil is quite interesting. It's a bit erratic in the first few shots, then it climbs up, goes a little bit to the right, and then as soon as it starts climbing up again, it becomes probably the easiest gun to control in the game, although that is only for the last 30 shots. I personally wouldn't advise wasting half your magazine in order to down someone with the last half, but even with this mix, it is still usable really well up to 135 meters, so it gets a recoil score of 45. Now for its damage. Under 41 meters, so in its first damage range, it got hit pretty hard, and you can clearly see this. If you're not hitting upper torso shots, you're going to be having a pretty bad time. After 41 meters though, it is pretty average. You'll be beating most Modern Warfare long range weapons, but against Cold War, well, you'll see what happens. So it gets a damage score of 42.5. And when we add up all the categories, it gets a final score of 127.5. This is a pretty good score for a long range weapon, and this would be a pretty decent gun, except for the fact that we have things like the Fara, the C58, and the Krig. When we compare the Groza to the Krig has better damage up close in its lower torso, and sure, its limb damage at range is a lot worse, but you're probably going to be hitting upper torso and lower torso shots no matter where you are, and the Krig will win. Plus, the Krig is easier to use at almost all ranges and stretches out for another 30 extra meters. The only thing the Groza has over the Krig is that it has a much better ADS time and a faster rate of fire, so you can get on target more. But at extremely long ranges, you will be losing to the Krig. When going up against the C58, the Groza's only advantage is its rate of fire. In its damage category, it gets blown away by the C58's potential. It gets pretty average scores, but it's at least consistent between its upper torso, lower torso, and limb. So you will be losing to a C58 if you both see each other at the same time and you don't miss. However, because of the C58's lower fire rate, if it misses, the Groza will be able to take the advantage and take out the C58 user. And then there's the Fara. The Groza has a better ADS time, almost by 100 milliseconds. It's got a better reload time, and it's got a better sprint out time. But none of those things really matter for a really long range assault rifle at long ranges, especially since the Fara can engage targets at extremely long ranges and hit all of its shots, have better TTKs in both damage ranges, and have a higher rate of fire. The Fara's TTKs are just insane compared to every other long range weapon, and its recoil makes it easy to actually achieve that. And even if you miss, good thing you have an extremely high rate of fire, because you'll just be back on target before your enemy is. The best chance for a Groza to beat a Fara is to already be shooting before the Fara even notices you, or to cause them to re-aim down their sights. But even if either of these things happen, the Fara is still probably going to win because it has a 130 millisecond advantage when it comes to TTK at longer ranges. And that's assuming you don't miss any shots. When I talked about the patch notes, I said that the Fara basically is unchanged because it is just way too good still. Basically, what we can see from this is that the Groza could be a decent long-range weapon. It's just that all the other weapons do a better job, and they do it in different ways. If the Fara didn't exist, I could definitely see the Groza taking a place alongside the C58 and the Krig. And sadly, I can't even recommend the Groza as a sniper support weapon, even though it has great ADS, and that's just because its TTKs up close just aren't there. And even if you use the Groza for 30 meters to 135 meters like it's supposed to be used, you'll still be losing a lot of fights to the Fara, which is sad, and the MG82, which is the current king of medium range combat. Honestly, I really hope that the Groza gets buffed in its first damage range again so that its lower torso and limb shot damages are a little bit higher and they're kind of competitive, so you can kind of use it as a all-around weapon. But for now, against the other long-range weapons, sadly the Groza has no real place. Don't get me wrong, you'll still do good with the Groza if you have skill, but there are much better choices out there. But that's the Groza. I've used it since it got nerfed, and if you have, what do you think about it? Can you feel the difference? And that's the video. If you enjoyed it or if it's helped you in any way, let me know by leaving a like. If you got any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section down below. And if you want to make sure that you never miss another video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.